Hello students, today we will discuss about Bacon's contribution to the development of English essay. ओके इंग्लिश एसे में बेकन का क्या योगदान है, आज हम इस बारे में बात करेंगे। फ्रांसिस बेकन वॉज द फर्स्ट मैन टू राइट एसेज इन इंग्लैंड एंड कैन बी फेयरली कॉल्ड द फादर ऑफ द इंग्लिश एसे. There was no writer in England before Bacon who wrote objective essays. No doubt Nash wrote some articles which can be called essays, but his writings were very much different in nature and composition from those of Bacon. Neither did Nash conceive of himself as introducing a new form of writing in English literature. The forerunners of the character writers also cannot be called essayists in the true sense because they weren't too uniform and non-literary. Dekker comes chronologically after Bacon. Bacon therefore is the first of English essayists, as he remains for sheer mass and weight of genius the greatest. First three editions of Bacon's essays. Bacon's essays were published in three editions. They were first published in a small duodecimo volume in 1597. It contained only 10 essays. The second edition of this essay was published in 1612. This edition contained 38 essays, the earlier ones being carefully revised. The third and final edition came out in 1625. It was a much augmented edition and the number of the essays were thoroughly modified, altered, increased or diminished according to the will of the writer. Next, influence of Montague on Bacon. Bacon borrowed the form of the essay from Montague, the Frenchman, whose essays first appeared in French in 1580, and the first English translation of his essays was made by John Florio in 1603. Bacon, however, used the word essay in its basic sense of an essay or test, trial or attempt. His primary intention in writing the essays was to drive out his thoughts on particular topics, and it was to some extent accidental that was began as a kind notebook turned into a set of miniature masterpieces. Next, differences between Bacon and Montague. Though Bacon took the form of the essay from Montague, he filled it with material drawn from his own mind. There is a great difference between the secluded French writer, once a courtier and perhaps a soldier, but now turned a spectator of life and its shrewd critic, and the great and power-seeking English lawyer and statesman, with one eye concentrated upon philosophic truth and the other watching the political activities of his age. In the first place, in Bacon's essay, we miss the lightness and ease and the friendly chat of the great essayists like Montague and Charles Lamb. The ideal essay implies a certain lightness and care and a confidential relation between the author and the reader. Next, Bacon's morality. Bacon's essays, according to the nature of the subject dealt in them, can be divided into three broad classes: moral and religious, domestic, political. In all these types of essays, He comes before the reader not in the character of a scientist or philosopher, but as a man of the world. In his reflection on public policy, he was influenced by his age also, and his essay possesses something of the very common in the age following that of Machiavelli and his second principle. Bacon himself was strongly imbued with Machiavellism. He was under no illusions about the ordinary motives of men, and he thought that we are much beholden to Machiavelli and others that write what men do and not what they ought to do. Bacon's contributions to human physiology do not rank in importance with his work in natural philosophy. In his essays, Bacon is busy in formulating a system which should help men in rising in this world and avoiding failure. Next, domestic essays. We gather the same impressions when we read those essays of Bacon in which he deals with the domestic relations and the special ties of love and friendship between human beings. He expresses the same utilitarian philosophy in the essay of friendship. He is not moved by the feelings of love and affection existing between friends. On the contrary, he values friendship highly, mainly for the advantage gained from it, comfort to the emotions, light to the understanding, and aid in the affairs of life. Next, Bacon's attitude towards religion. Bacon's attitude towards religion is also of the same practical nature and is destitute of fervor. It has its root in the brain, while the religion of saints and martyrs has its roots in the heart. In the essay of atheism, he acknowledges very sincerely, I had rather. The essay of atheism, he acknowledges very sincerely, I had rather believe all the fables in the legend and the Talmud and the Alcoran than that this universal frame is without a mind. But he would never have been greatly vexed if, as Walker thinks, circumstances had forced him to make a contrary statement. Next, political essays. Bacon is more at home in his role of statesman, and therefore, whenever he can, he turns from the private and personal to the political aspect of the question he is dealing with. These political essays of Bacon are in many ways his best, and his wisdom is shown, and in them to its best advantage. The essay of Plantation is the best of this type, and the soundness and validity of the principle enumerated in it have been established by the experience of centuries. He says, if you plant where savage do not only entertain with sufficient guard nevertheless. Next, Bacon's prose style. Bacon not only introduced a new literary form in English, he also rendered a considerable service to the development of English prose style. English prose before Bacon, or even in his own time, was rich and sonorous. The two great writers of the age of Bacon were Hooker and Riley. Richard Hooker, whose last book, Ecclesiastical Polity, was published in 1597, still remains as one of the greatest styles in the English. Riley also was a great writer and had written several things before 1597, though his History of the World did not come out till 7 years later. Last demerit of Bacon's style. There are a few demerits in the style of Bacon. The first and the foremost is that his language is largely permitted with Latinism. His essays have a fair sprinkling of Latin quotations, and he frequently quotes from his favorite Latin authors to prove his argument. He had a special liking for Latin and thought, though wrongly, that he would be remembered by his writings in Latin. Bacon's style lacks the musical quality of the best prose written of the age. In the words of George Sansbury, his sentences indeed do not attend to the extraordinary music which is seen in some of Brooke and Dunn, which is not wanting in Burton, which is the glory of Sir Thomas Browne, the saving grace of Milton's best prose, and the almost over-lavished and sometimes frittered away charm of Jeremy Taylor. Okay, thank you for watching.